2025 is the year of the agents. They've heard that Mark Benioff comes in from Salesforce and he says that half of my work can be done by agents. They're hearing coding agents. So earlier, where we could like copy paste our code and say, fix this, now we almost have Zuckerberg talking about maybe some of the agents are like software developers. So I'll have a team of some developer humans and developer agents kind of a thing. So people are hearing about like agents in these aspects. Maybe we can start by defining agents, like in simple terms, what makes something an agent and how is it different than a chatbot or an automated script or a cognitive workflow?
Like I think at a 10,000 feet view, agents are capabilities or tools or systems that have agency. And what I mean by agency is given a set of input criteria or an environment or a circumstance, they can have the agency to decide what is the next best action, right? Like really at the core of that is what defines an agent. So when I think about deterministic workflows where you're embedding AI, to me, like that's not necessarily an agent because you are defining what the workflow execution steps should look like and you're embedding AI, which again, by the way, I think everything gets labeled as an agent. That's not necessary, right? Like sometimes you want that workflow. And if you think about, okay, so if an agent is something that can dynamically make decisions, like how can it achieve that? So the components that make up an agent are, to me, three things. It's what is the orchestration, what is the tools, and what is the memory capability, right? And if you think about a human, we have a very similar mechanism. Our orchestration is our brain, right? Like it's the model in the case of the agent that gives it that ability to dynamically and flexibly think about what the right step is, but it cannot work in the environment and cannot take signals if it doesn't have tools. Similar to humans, if we cannot take signals through our eyes or cannot operate with our hands, we can just orchestrate in our head, but we cannot execute and get feedback, right? So, and that tool's ability is really important to marry with the orchestration. And then lastly, you need a layer that keeps state, right? Because if I just orchestrate and if I call tools, but I can't over time remember what I'm doing, then I essentially have amnesia. And like, that is a condition that you see even with humans where, hey, like they're amazing at thinking about a problem, they have the tools, but for whatever reason, their memory capacity isn't there. So I think with agents, we also have that third component, which is memory, and that could be short term or long term. And if you think about things like continuous learning, as we talked about before, like you move towards more of this like long-term memory, and you're seeing a lot of advancements moving from short-term to long-term memory space as well.
That's so beautiful. That is one of the best explanations of agents that I have heard. And many people I've heard, like Andrew Ng talks about agents as agenticness and patterns and all. But let me paraphrase what you said and tell me if I got it right. So the first step you said is orchestration, and that's the most important one. Where if there is some low cognitive workflow where you say chatbot, you get a question. If the question is this, then go this direction, and then within this, if there is another detail needed, then go to this direction. If that is created by the developer of the chatbot, then it's not very agentic because the flow of how it is going, that orchestration that you're talking about, is predefined. As opposed to a research agent, where you ask a general researchy question, and then the next step, the agent thinks of that, I think I need to do a Google search on this. And then it does a Google search. And then it says, let me look at some of the more recent publications because this search pointed me to another. And then it is also defining how it is taking the next step and the next step, as opposed to the developer predefining it. So that is like your table stakes. That's the first definition of agent. And then what you said is that, but that orchestration is not enough because if you have that orchestration capability, but if agents cannot do anything, like do is in this example searching the internet. So if they cannot search the internet, then they can orchestrate all they want, but they're not useful. They're not autonomous. So they can do things like both actions that they take and feedback that they receive. So that's the tools piece that you define. And then you said to do this orchestration and the tools, there is an underlying thing that you need, which connects the multiple steps and how they relate to each other. And that's why they're like, we kind of haven't said it, but we definitely need a memory, and that it keeps pointing to. And that's why you created this clear definition of agent. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. You nailed it. And I think like once you have that definition, you can then define agenticness, right? There's a lot of, oh, is it agentic enough? Like, and to me, that's like, okay, in the spectrum of static and dynamic orchestration, like where are you on that spectrum? Because, you know, if it's fully dynamic orchestration, that works for generalized use cases, but may not work for, you know, a mortgage processing application at a bank, right? So then maybe it's halfway agentic. And then the same way with tools, like then you can say, okay, like what type of tools am I using? Like, am I using knowledge tools like humans use their eyes and ears, or am I using action tools, my limbs or my voice, right? So then you can start having these more functional conversations around, okay, what do I need to build my agent, and what is it that I'm comfortable with?
This was govai.fm. Connect with us on LinkedIn, suggest a guest, and stay tuned for real stories from AI in action.